Well, hello again, YouTube. It's Petey Two Finger. I got these pliers clean. They were rusty. Now, this method is not something that I discovered. I Googled it, and I've used this 4 times now. I've been finding sets of pliers at the resale store that are rusted out. They'll be 99 cents, maybe they'll be $1.99. And I bought this linesman pliers, which I know those are kind of expensive. I got an 8, I've got a 10, and I've got a 12 now. And I didn't pay nothing for them because they were rusted out, but I was able to get them to look pretty good. Mind you, this one has a little bit of pitting on it. And also, you can read here where it says Korea. It was made in Korea. So the secret to this less elbow grease method, because I could get in here with the sandpaper, but I'm a little bit older. I'm going to end up with fire shoulder and sore rib cage for 3 days if I go nuts and tear it up with the sanding block. So what you do, you use vinegar, and it doesn't matter if you got red vinegar, white vinegar. I use white vinegar on these, but the red vinegar does the same thing. Vinegar is wonderful. I make a 1 to 10 solution of vinegar and water, and I keep that in a spray bottle. And it's nice because it's natural. It's not a petroleum product, so it doesn't have the risk factor of harming a surface, removing some of the finish or burning some of the finish on something more sensitive. But it is acidic enough to get some of the more tough cleaning jobs done. So vinegar is fantastic. One thing is if they're unaccustomed, vinegar has a sulfuric or a farty smell, and if you make up a vinegar cleaning solution, let's say you use it in the common area of an apartment, you may run into someone who is not so experienced, and they might complain to the landlord. He stunk up the hallway. Yeah, because I was cleaning up after your messy mess. Which, that's the downside to using vinegar. It does have a smell, but if you compare it with fumes from thinner or acetone, vinegar is natural and it's safe. It's not as caustic. It's not as toxic. It's also not as strong, but it does an amazing job on rusty pliers or tools. So what I like to do is I'll drop it into a Ziploc baggie, and I'll pour just enough vinegar to come up to about here. And then I'll drop it into a glass. You could if you had a piece of pipe, you could drop this into, that would work really well. The idea is you want to form the baggie around the pliers, because if you just lay this down, you'll have to pour more in there and it might spill out. What I like to do is find something, whether that be other tools, other handles of screwdrivers. You put it in a coffee cup and drop stuff around it. On this particular job, what I did, there was a cereal box, and I tore down the sides of the cereal box and ripped the chunk out and made a triangle and stuffed that in one side of the coffee cup, and then I tore out the other side of the box and stuffed that on the other side of it, and I made a little frame. And this way, I was able to remove the pliers because it will become fouled. The vinegar will break down the rust, and what it does, it converts it. It's a chemical reaction, and it leaves this purple or black layer, which it's a chemical reaction. It's the rust is broken down, and it converts it into this like purplish black oily layer. and I'll remove that. In this case, I mean, any type of self-respectable solvent, Coca-Cola, vinegar, soap, whatever you want to use to remove that. I like to soak it, and then when it gets all black and fouled out, I'll take it out and I'll clean that off of there. In this case today, I had some Ajax or Comet. It's powdered soap. And I was using my finger at first, and I noticed that black stuff got on there. And then I kind of had to remove that. It stuck to my finger. It's chemical. We don't want that touching our skin. So I started using an old toothbrush. So you'd knock out a little bit of that Comet on the counter, pick it up on the wet toothbrush, and then go ahead and clean that black layer off of there, knock it dry, and plop it back in the vinegar until it got reasonably clean. And for me, this was rusty. So this went 4 repetitions in the vinegar. One of those was overnight. So typically I would plop it in there, go and do some other chores, come back about an hour later, pull it out, knock out a little bit of Comet, go over it with the toothbrush real quick and run the water over it, and then knock it dry and back into the vinegar it went. Now, I did end up using some abrasives. I had some heavier sandpaper. I went at it a little bit. Then I used lighter gauge sandpaper, and then I used a steel wool. Now, when you get steel wool wet, it's going to rust out. You can try to squeeze all the water out of it. You can use a hair dryer and dry it out. But once it gets wet, that steel wool is going to be pretty much foul. So if you do use steel wool on the final step of this, and I did, but I just used a smaller amount because I knew, well, that's pretty much going to be garbage when I'm done with it. So it was 4 or 5 runs being soaked in the vinegar, and then I used the powdered soap and a toothbrush to remove the chemical reaction, which is this purple black filmic layer that forms from the vinegar, the acid of the vinegar breaking the rust down. That's the byproduct of that. Remove that nasty stuff several times, and then when it got down to the end, I did clean it up a little bit with the sandpaper, and for the final touch, I applied oil. Put oil in the top, oil in the bottom and the seams, and worked it, and then guck black dirty oil started coming out on the circle here and everywhere else. So you grab a paper towel, you're going to work it and try to work that gunk out of there. You can also use a little bit of solvent to accelerate the process. I like to use isopropyl alcohol. In this case, I actually put some naphtha in there. Put the oil in it, I worked it, and applied a paper towel to remove the gunk. And when there was no more gunk coming out, I hit it with the naphtha, and that made more of it cleaned out the dirty oil that was in there. And once that job had been cleaned up, I applied a second coat of fresh oil. And then the oil that I gave it a good oiling. Like when you open this up, you'll see there's some gaps in there. I filled those up with oil on both sides. Got it good and oily and worked it, and then just kind of cleaned it up. Spread the oil all over the tool and the handle, and then went in with the alcohol for the final step to remove the oily layer from the handle, what other grease marks were on the handle, and whatever excess oil that was on the metal came off, stuck to the paper towel because I used the isopropyl alcohol. So in order to do this, I used a Ziploc baggie, I used vinegar, I used an old toothbrush, I used a can of, actually 5W30 motor oil. That's the oil that I use. It was just some motor oil. I used a little bit of steel wool. I used a little bit of sandpaper. And I used a little bit of rubbing alcohol. And you really don't need anything except for the vinegar. Baggy's really nice to have. The oil is nice to have too. But you could do this. You don't have to have that Comet soap. You can get that black stuff off of there. You can get it off of there. You can get it off of there using hand soap and elbow grease. So if you've got a rusty tool, if you're in your grandpa's workshop or in your dad's tool set, and you see something you like I have at my fingertips right now, I have 3 sets of needle nose. These curvy ones, these are my brother's favorite. This is my favorite needle nose. It's got a spring. These are 4.5, I think they measure out at. And I really like these needle nose. These are my favorite. The smaller, the better. And I did have a set of, I don't know what happened to those. They're probably in the other room. Those real small sparkly ones. Remember those? Yeah, they're 4s. They're not 4.5. They're smaller, and those are for jewelry. So they don't have any knurling on the teeth. There's no teeth. They're just smooth. So this works for. You could use this on a hammer. You could use this on a screwdriver. You could use this on any pliers. Anywhere that there's rust, you can apply the vinegar and use that as a de-rusting agent, and it works considerably. I mean, these were rusty, And when did we get them? Last night? Yeah, we got them last night, and this morning they were basically done. So overnight, And I mean, I removed that black stuff 4 or 5 times, and I was letting it soak. So that's the consideration: is you can go in, you can use the sandpaper and give it all you got, blow your arm out, or you can be patient and do it the other way, which is soaking it, removing that stuff, soaking it, removing. I mean, either way, you have to get the rust off of there. So that's up to you how you would like to do it. You can do it the old-fashioned way and use the sandpaper. That's not what this video is about. It's about doing it in steps and then getting that black gunk off of there. And maybe try not to get it all over your skin so much. Don't be like Petey. Anyway, you guys, I'm going to cut you loose. Tell me your favorite rusty tool tips, Coca-Cola, olive oil. I really don't know. All I know was I Googled this when I got a pair of linesman pliers that were really nasty. And I think I found those. I think we were like in a Walmart parking lot, and they were laying on the ground, like rusted, and they didn't even move, And they're beautiful Craftsman linesman pliers. More for me. All right, you guys, take care of yourselves. Try to stay cool, or is it warm? Hug your pets. I always say that. Take care of those little critters. Give them some extra love from Petey, and peace.